of the Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. Miguel, you're here in studio. We're pledging today, right?
Yes, we are. This
And
is the
go ahead.
final day of our fall member drive. We've been fundraising on the air for the past 14 days, and we are on the final day, and we are currently just past the $53,000 mark.
Fantastic. Well, what's our goal for the next hour? What do we want to do in this hour? How many calls do we want to get and how much money?
All right. You know what? We're going to say let's get 5 phone calls this next hour. And we'll say why not? Let's try to make a good 500 this next hour. I think
there we go. So 5 people, at least 5 people with $100 a year pledge, or it could be 10 people with 50 a year, or it could be 20 people.
It could be a mixed balance. Yeah, either way.
Whatever the number is, but let's do at least 5 and support the KFAI, support this program. How do you do that? Give us a call at the station, give them the number and how to get us, if you would, Miguel.
The pledge phone line is 612-375-9030. Give us a call, talk to one of our phone operators, and we'll be sure to thank you on the air. But we're also paying attention to online pledges as they come in. You can go to kfai.org if you prefer to give online, and we'll see it as it come in, and we'll let Al know to thank you personally.
There we go. Yeah, well, thank you.
So, thank you.
I'm Al McFarlane. Again, thank you, and welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I have so much fun. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be a part of the KFAI community, part of your community, listening and talking with you throughout the year. I see people everywhere, Miguel, and they don't know me, they know the voice. And they say, oh, I'm checking out somewhere at a store. And I say, thank you or hello. You're on KFAI. They listen and they recognize the voices of the on-air personalities. And so that's a good feeling. It really is. But it lets me know that people do listen, they feel connected, and they make me feel like family. Well, I'm talking to family right now. Those of you who are listening right now, either online or on the radio, do something this hour. I hope I'm asking 20 of you to go to the phone or go to your desktop and make the call, become a supporter, pledge your support, and make your contribution to KFAI. This is a great enterprise. We call it sometimes a different radio station every hour because we have so many points of view, so many perspectives, we respect and elevate so many cultures, people from around the world. That makes it different and unique. But there's a basic theme, and the basic theme is celebrating culture, celebrating freedom. We do that here at KFAI. So do your thing, listeners and viewers. Go to your phone or to your computer and connect with us. Pledge your support right now. I'll be asking you over the course of the hour to do the same thing. So, Miguel, thank you, man, hanging out, and we'll just get back and keep inviting people to step up and do their part.
Thank you, and operators are standing by.
All right, great. Well, listen, I've got a great program as always, and we have been paying particular attention to the upcoming political season, and we have invited most candidates for most of the city and suburban races to join us in this program. We are glad to have 2 that did respond. And I want to begin by introducing and talking to one of them who's running for a city council seat in St. Paul. Cheniqua Johnson says she's a first generation college graduate. She lives and owns a home in Dayton Bluff in St. Paul. She is a former congressional staffer. She's a philanthropist. She is a community public servant, and now she's running to be the next city council member in Ward 7 in St. Paul. She wants to work and get work done for the east side of St. Paul. Cheniqua, good afternoon. Welcome back. You've been before. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yes, it's good to see you. I'm doing well. Super excited to be here.
Well, give us the campaign update. And by that, I mean, tell a little bit more about you, why you're running, what your vision is, and what you intend to accomplish on behalf of the residents of Ward 7 and the residents of the city of St. Paul.
Well, first and foremost, I am the DFL and labor endorsed candidate that's running out here in our ward. And this year we've got just a lot of things locally that are happening on the east side of St. Paul. And so, we're running on a platform around affordable housing and making sure that we can keep rent costs down, we can keep property taxes manageable, and that we can also include some, hopefully, new development opportunities here on the east side and in the ward for affordable housing, and overall just some strong investments throughout the city in what's the state of our current housing crisis here on the east side. And so the public safety space is the second one that's coming up on every other door. We have here in this city of St. Paul an opportunity to invest in the workforce too, when it comes to safety, when it comes to the mere fact that our fire department hasn't had a new full-time firefighter in 20 years, just some strong investments that we could actually make a decision about at the local level in the next few years, especially as folks retire or as the workforce continues to need more and more people to come in and work in these jobs here in St. Paul. And so, I'm hoping to see some investment at the local level in our safety and our safety workers and our libraries and our rec centers, and basic things. The last part is kind of a catch-all, but the basic city services that we need to see here on the east side. I think a lot of folks are maybe they hear about, the residentials every now and then. It's the local races that kind of slide under the radar. And right now we have an opportunity to vote for our city council and our school board candidates. And if you ask me, it's probably the more important ones, really, because these are the ones that can be decided by one vote. It's the elections that, actively talk about property taxes, actively talk about potholes, and actively has conversations around the schools, the libraries, rec centers, public transportation, just kind of the things that impact your everyday life. The school board oversees a lot of the school district in St. Paul, the public school district in St. Paul. And so their decisions directly impact our families, not in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, but, next year, next month, really. And so,
yeah. Listen, just talk about your own personal story again for people who might know. You and I have a connection from Worthington, Minnesota. Talk about who Cheniqua Johnson is and her movement from being a 5-year-old kid to a candidate for city council today.
Yeah, Cheniqua is a fighter. Let me tell you that. Over the last few, when it comes to the last 20 years of my life, really have been kind of throughout the state of Minnesota. I grew up in Worthington, like you said, and was not involved in politics at all at that time. I think when I was 5, I wanted to be a mail carrier because they could drive on the other side of the truck. And I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to deliver mail for folks because I could learn to drive that truck on the other side. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And it translated to being able to be the first person in my family to go to college at the University of Minnesota. I graduated with a degree in family social science, and probably could have went into mental health or social work, but I had already been working for undergrad in politics and in policy, and I chose to come out of graduation working for Keith Ellison, and when he was still in Congress. And in between that, I feel like a lot of it has been just finding my story, because me, typically, I am the youngest in my family by my brother, who's 14 months older than me. And, there's me, my mom, my dad, and my brother all growing up in Southwest Minnesota, basically where I was raised, what I was used to, and then moving to the Twin Cities and kind of finding my voice, not only as a Black young woman, but also just, I would describe it more as like being able to find things that I really enjoyed, do the things I'm really passionate about. But yeah, if you would have told the 5-year-old me that she'd be running for city council or running or doing anything political, I probably would have asked you, what does that mean? What is politics? Because I didn't actually know. And so over time, I've just had a really great opportunity to learn from some of the best in our state. And then also find my own voice in that has really led to the platform that you see now as I'm running for city council.
And you're working, your day job today is in philanthropy. What do you do by day?
Yeah, I work at the St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation. I'm a program officer. So I oversee the grant making portfolios and domestic violence prevention, civic engagement, and the overall health portfolios. And so like when I'm just thinking about what things we're looking at, I work with the nonprofits that are basically handling our families, our kids, and what I think has been just exacerbated over the last few years, like our mental health and providing everyday services to people that need them. And so a lot of clinics and nonprofit organizations that are directly serving our community. And so they're coming to the foundation for additional funding in other places, but that's pretty much the brink of my work.
Your plan for public safety, that's top of mind everywhere in Twin Cities and around the country. What concerns do you have? What ideas are you putting forward?
I had an opportunity during this last year to serve on the police chief examining committee for the city of St. Paul. And when it comes to first and foremost, like the experience I've had both growing up in Worthington and working directly with law enforcement, some of which we politically agreed, others of which we didn't, but it was really to try and make sure that my family had an advocate on both ends of the spectrum, to watching and being a part of what was 2020 and the civil unrest, to then transforming to being able to be a young person actively involved in who was going to lead our police force moving forward. And so I've really seen just, especially when it comes to public safety, a lot of voices along that table. Really what it boils down to me is like a lot of our departments, both in the city and our police department and our fire department, are often talking about the workforce shortage that they're experiencing. We're looking at maybe potentially 20% of the force for St. Paul's police department being eligible for retirement in 5 years. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the firefighters still negotiating their contract with the administration, and then still having the reality that they've had some of the same amount of firefighters since 20, 25 years ago. So they're doing some of the similar work of maybe the firefighter in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s. And when we just think about the demand, stuff is happening all across the city. And I'm in Dayton's Bluff, so we've had quite a few, unfortunately, tragic events happening in our community. Gun violence right now is a hot topic because it's happening in people's doorstep. It's making its way to the front, to the front yard, quite literally, or to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Or people have been watching, right? Ward 7 also represents Harding High School. And we lost a student on school campus just last school year. And so just that space of like, those are the conversations I'm having in community. At the local level, I'm hoping to bring forward having been at the different decision-making tables when it comes to conversations around safety, around community investment and our community first public safety programs, but also having that relationship with law enforcement, that relationship with many of the public safety workers, which include like our librarians, our rec centers, because those everyday employees also touch your students and also touch our children and families, and quite literally are sometimes the people stepping up in a very dangerous situation to defend our community. So that's been like the biggest thing when it relates to just overall why our community is heavily talking about public safety for sure.
Cheniqua Johnson, thank you so much. Good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. I'm glad to see you out there. It's important, I think, that young people and our people step up, step forward, and take the position that we have both a duty and obligation, and we recognize opportunity. Before I bring my next guest on, I want to remind you and invite Miguel to join me again from the studio to remind you this is why you need to support KFAI and support the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We call these robust conversations, great conversations, and this is certainly one. Miguel, what can people get if they support KFAI?
Oh, well, we do have all sorts of fall member drive premiums that we are offering for folks who give. And on one end, we got newly and nicely designed hoodies. And on the other end, we got baseball hats, we got t-shirts, we got socks, all tailor-made and designed for this fall member drive. And you can see those if you visit our website, kfai.org, or if you follow KFAI on Facebook, Meta, Instagram, on Twitter, you should be able to see those premiums. But we always say that $60 is what makes you a member. But really, whether if you are a member or can give whatever you can, it's greatly appreciated. And we also want to send a thank you to Jason and Maureen. Both of them have given to KFAI over the past hour. So big thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, you know what to do. Call the number or go online. The number
612-375-9030 or go online at kfai.org.
There we go. Okay, well, I'm going to continue with the show, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. Next, I want to bring another candidate for a office. Roslyn Harmon is running for mayor of Golden Valley. And Roslyn, good to see you. Welcome to the conversation. And I want to tell our listeners to stand by for the final part of the show, interviewing a Cuban journalist extraordinaire. That'll be a great conversation as well, so stay tuned for that. Roslyn, how you doing, my friend?
Oh, Mr. McFarlane, thank you so much for having me here. It is such an honor,
Well, it's my duty, and I'm pleased to be in a position to invite you and the people that you're competing with to be part of this public discourse. Thank you for being responsive and showing up. So we want people to know that we invited everybody. You responded and you're here, and thank you for being here. Why do you want to run for mayor of Golden Valley? And in the context, talk about who is Roslyn Harmon.
Absolutely. Well, Roslyn Harmon, I am a 30-year resident of Golden Valley, been a community leader for about 10 years. The last 7 have been very sweet. For 10 years, we've been doing the sweet potato comfort pie in the community of Golden Valley, but I wasn't invested in the city government until about 7 years ago when our current mayor, Chef Harris, really said, hey, I don't see any Black and brown bodies represented anywhere on commission, in our city leadership. I need you at the table. And so he invited myself, my mother, and some other key community leaders of Golden Valley that are Black and brown. And he said, hey, how can you help us? So we sat at the table with not only himself, but with the city manager and our former chief of police. And we created the city's first equity plan. This was 7 years ago. And from that, it became the Rising Tides Task Force, which is now the DEI Commission. But not only that, as residents, we created a group called PRIME, which is Prioritize Race and Inclusion for More Equity. And we were able to really have our Black and brown voices projected within city government on behalf of Golden Valley. So our voice was able to be heard. And that's phenomenal. I, like Cheniqua said, I had no idea that I would be running for mayor of Golden Valley, but here I am. I am an educator of over 20 years, did my postgraduate degree in marriage and family therapy, and now I am the executive director of Dispute Resolution Center. We are the first community mediation organization in the state of Minnesota. So December 13th is officially Dispute Resolution Center Day. And all of those things, as well as being an ordained pastor, but all of these things have really prepared me for now. And I'm seeing that because what our residents need and what our community needs, they need someone who will listen. And I do that. That's what I do. But not only that, I'm very proactive in the work that I do. The city has called on me as an advisor for restorative work. As you know, the city of St. Paul, Mayor Melvin Carter, he's on it with the restorative work. And my organization, we do We have a lot of contracts where we are the direct service provider in that realm for city government, as well as with Ramsey County. But I thought, wow, how beautiful would it be to have Golden Valley be a restorative city where we're really working to repair harm, bringing relationships back together, building on behalf of community to make sure that we're safe and we're strong and we're accountable as well as transparent.
How's it look? How's your campaign look?
Hey, we're down to the last stretch today. Next week we will find out what's happening, but it's good, you know, hitting the pavement. I had Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison with me this weekend. That was beautiful. Him going to the doors with me. But, you know, just coming up with these last minute strategies to really get folks to vote. Golden Valley, again, when we're on this off year, it's hard to get people to the polls. And so it's really important that we get all people to vote, our young people especially, to get out there, as well as BIPOC residents to vote.
How different are the issues in Golden Valley from those mentioned by Cheniqua, 7th Ward, St. Paul? Cheniqua, East Side, kind of inner city. Golden Valley, relatively well-off, wealthy, suburban community. So how do issues emerge in that community? And what are those relative to what's happening with the broader Black community in North Minneapolis, for example?
Sure.
Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, suburban.
Well, public safety, that's a huge one with us in Golden Valley. We don't have a lot of crime. Our crime is very low. But what happened was we lost out of 35 officers that have been a part of Golden Valley for 20, 30, even 40 years. We lost 28 last year. And the reason for that loss just had to do with some power struggles and probably some communication issues within city government and the department. And that was very unfortunate.
So 28 resigned?
28 resigned. And, you know, our current mayor, he called out racism in the department. There was a full-on investigation that showed, you know, some very alarming and disappointing things. However, I think a lot of those officers left because their voice was not being heard. They felt like they weren't getting heard with the things that they needed to really run a department. And so it's unfortunate that had to happen. But here we are. We have a new police chief. He's a year in. It's beautiful that we have him, as well as 2 new assistant chiefs, and all 3 are of color. But we're just really working towards rebuilding, reimagining Golden Valley. And so I'm vice chair of our Police Relations Commission, which is called PEACE. It stands for Police Employment, Accountability, Community, and Engagement Commission. And we work in the areas of data, recruitment, and community engagement. So I sit in on interviews, and it's so nice to say that when we were down to 7 officers with the support of Hennepin County sheriffs, we sworn in 3 officers 2 weeks ago, and so we are at 19. So we should have a full department. That is our goal by 2024.
Awesome. Listen, last question, your vision. You've mentioned it already, but talk about it again. Golden Valley as a symbol of what Minnesota can and should become. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So when I do restorative work, right, for the city of St. Paul, they're on top of it. And restorative, people are like, well, what does restorative mean, right? So it's principles, it's a strategy that really addresses conflicts, repairing harm, and building positive relationships with communities. And restorative practices is so fluid. We see it in the school districts. We see it on city levels, but it would really be great to see it, you know, as a city. And so that just means, right, where we're strengthening communities, we're enhancing accountability, we're reducing crime by having top-notch public safety initiatives, also inclusivity and equity, improving citizen government relations, right? How are we looking at the way that we're hiring, right? Typically when we're hiring, it's one candidate on this side and everybody else on the other side. That's very intimidating, right? But with restorative, it's saying, hey, we're all here at the table. We're all equal. We all have a voice. So let's shift this. And so that's what I'm bringing to the table. Building positive school and workplace environments, right? As we talk about the conflicts with regarding SROs, right? So keeping our schools safe. That's
School
all
resource officers, SRO.
Yes. And long-term systemic change. So really making sure that Golden Valley is vibrant. It's a beautiful place where people want to continue to live, work, and play, keeping our taxes low, right? Our taxes have gone up 30% in just 4 years, having more affordable, attainable housing. And most importantly, it's about community. It's about the people. And Golden Valley is in the heart of the Twin Cities metro area. And so for me, it's about the heart of the people. What is it that at a local level you want in order to bring forth that systemic change on behalf of not only Golden Valley, but all communities, all cities? And that requires us to work together and it not be one-sided, not to the left, not to the right, but in the middle. And that's what I recommend.
Roslyn, thank you so much. Good luck in your campaign. Thank you for your work. I'm just so impressed that you had both the nerve and the energy to declare yourself a candidate for the mayor of Golden Valley. And I think you're going to be a great mayor because you have a great attitude. And it's about time. It's about time for the change. And you represent and you are the change. Well, listen, keep up the good work. Good luck, and we'll get you back, okay?
All right.
All right. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. As promised, a robust conversation, and the balance of the program will live up to that as well. I am pleased to meet and to present to you Liz Oliva Fernandez. She was born and lives in Havana, Cuba. She's a graduate of Cuba's premier journalism school, and she was a TV correspondent before joining the US-based Belly of the Beast film production company, a company whose executive producers are Oliver Stone and Danny Glover, heroes of mine. And as a member of Belly of the Beast and the anchor of their video documentary series, the series is called The War on Cuba, she has won the 2021 Gracie Award for Best Online Video Host, the 2021 One World Media Award. She beat out BBC and Al Jazeera networks, and she's won the 2022 Telly Award for Best Online Documentary Series. I had the opportunity to view 3 segments of the series before and preparing for the show, and I tell you, it's amazingly beautiful and powerful work. Liz Fernandez, good afternoon. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure for me being here. Well, I'm cold. I'm from Cuba. This weather is killing me.
It's different, right? And it's not cold yet, so just stick around.
Okay.
Stick around, you know what Cuba is. Mucho gusto en conocerle. Bienvenido. Sabe que yo soy medio cubano. Mi padre es de Cuba, de San Luis. Nació en San Luis, Cuba. Pero yo nunca he visitado a Cuba, pero algún día.
Well, you have to go to Cuba.
Claro, claro. Y siempre digo que tengo sangre de Cuba, tengo sentimiento de Cuba, y por eso tengo orgullo de ser cubano.
Ah, muy lindo. Muchísimas gracias. Qué lindo eso. No sabía.
Listen, so talk about your film career and talk about the work you're doing. I have some questions that we've prepared together. One of them is the idea of parachute journalism. What does that phrase refer to?
Yeah, well, parachute journalism is when someone is coming from Western Hemisphere. I'm talking about journalists from the United States or Canada or Europe, and he just jump and show up in a country in the Caribbean or in the south of the world, and he trying to explain to everybody a phenomenon or an issue in this country. Okay, we are trying to do that, but the other way around. I'm a Black woman from Cuba who work for U.S. media outlet who is coming from Cuba to the United States, not to trying to explain to people here the current situation in the country, because that's a lie. I don't live here, so I just start to know and get involved how the things work here. But just trying to explain or trying to go deep about what drive the U.S. policy against my country, a policy that I have been suffering my entire life. My mom was born under the sanctions. I was born under the sanctions, and I almost 30. If I have a child of 5 years, maybe she was born under the sanctions too. So I'm trying to explain and to go deep and to trying to interview the people behind this policy.
Okay, all right. And so let's talk about Cuban, why Cuban Americans who came, say, from 58 to 65 want to return Cuba to the pre-1955, 59 days. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know what that means for them, but I can tell you what that means for my family. Before the revolution, my grandma was born like in a really marginalized and poor neighborhood. She barely used shoes in the entire life. She wasn't able to go to a school. In fact, she started working at 9 years old when she had 9 years old. I'm talking about my grandma, that is the granddaughter of Spaniards. If I talk about my grandparent, that is a mulatto, black mestizo man, I can tell that he barely had rights to nothing because he was a black man. Growing up in a really right-wing society when black people used to have access to nothing.
So let me interject my family story just to give you the context that I have. My father's family is from Jamaica, and right around, I think, the turn of the century, 1902, 3, or 4, I'm not sure exactly when, my grandfather and grandmother went from Jamaica to Cuba to work farming, right? And all of my dad and his sisters and brothers were all born in Cuba and grew up speaking Spanish and English, but Spanish is the primary language. But they left Cuba because they were discouraged and left broke. And they thought they would find opportunity in Cuba, but they were among many, many Jamaicans, Black Jamaicans, who came back to Jamaica having experienced a harder life in Cuba than they had in Jamaica. That's a story I get. Does that make sense to you in the context of how you described your grandparents?
Yeah, of course, because it was really bad at that time for them. I'm talking that my mother was the first in the family to have access to go to college. She studied medicine for free in Cuba. She became a surgeon, and I'm the second line that I'm studying journalism also in a college. So I don't know what kind of Cuba they're trying to bring back, but it's not a Cuba that is for us.
So what is the
Black
Cuba?
people, marginalized people.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. What Cuba do you want to create for yourself and your family and the people that follow you? What's your vision of the most ideal Cuba operating freely in the world without the pressure of the blockade and without the oppression of U.S. policy?
I always talk about that my grandparents have their own revolution, so I need my own revolution. So I'm talking a revolution inside of this revolution, because I really dream with a Cuba, prosper Cuba, economically with opportunities for everybody. I'm dreaming with the Cuba when the people who left can come back, be again there and trying to apport to the society. I'm talking about a Cuba when there's no difference if you live inside of Cuba or if you decide to go outside of Cuba, that we can have like a normal relations with the people who left in the moment. I'm talking about a Cuba when Black people, women have like I'm talking about social, racial justice for everybody. Because even when the revolution came to the power in the 59 and gave everybody social justice and access to public health care and public education, everybody didn't start in the same point of the line. I'm talking with our background, that our people was enslaved for so many years. So there is a thing that Cuba couldn't detach itself from the legacy of this colonialism on this slavery. So even when we are doing a lot of work in order to get more opportunities to Black people, I think that we need to keep target that, because it's pretty difficult. Like change the reality, give more opportunities for them. I'm trying to. I'm dreaming with the Cuba with less racism. I'm dreaming with a Cuba with there is no something that LGBTQ people have rights. Now there we have like a new legislation, and we're talking about the families code when Cuba law give rights to people, minorities that have been marginalized for decades, and now they have like a conquest rights. I'm talking about culture, because the main thing of the people is going behind the law. So even we have law to protect the people needs to change the way they think.
Right.
And recognize. I'm talking about with the Cuba where I don't know, a Cuba when everybody's proud of being Cuban. Because for me it's quite different. I just see like people of my age don't be proud of being Cuban anymore because it's too violent being Cuban. It's the same when we were a child. Well, my case was I was a child. I wasn't. I want to be Black because it's too violent. You have to recognize all the violence that comes with the Blackness. In some point of my life with activists, I became the shame in the proud. I'm pretty proud of being a Black woman, and my Afro hair, and my natural hair. So I'm proud of my heritage. But it's the same with Cubans. Big Cubans is nowadays the current situation around the world is pretty violent. That means that your entire life have been during scarcities, blackouts, crisis after crisis. Because everybody say, if Cuba is so good, because why everybody wants to leave Cuba? It's because you can't eat opportunities. You can't eat safety or access to free education. You can't do profit with all of that. So even when we are being achieved all of this, it's pretty difficult the life in Cuba nowadays. Nobody should have to survive in a situation like that.
And despite the difficulties that exist right now, those exacerbated by the continuation of the blockade by U.S. policy, but also by the COVID pandemic, there still is a baseline of positivity and hope. I mean, I hear that in you, right? You are bringing an attitude of winning and of not surrendering to the narrative that marginalized us in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think that the hopeness will come from the people here, with the Black people in this country, and also with the people in general, all the solidarity. Because the first time, this is my second time in this country. The first time that I came was for shooting Uphill on the Hill on Hardline on the Hudson. Is the two new documentaries that Belly of the Beast has been working on it, and we expect to release before the end of this year. I was really frustrated. Like I'm frustrated, angry, because I have been talked for weeks for politicians, policymakers, staffers, and I think that they don't care. It's like in this country, people are always thinking about an election, and this is the country of the elections. So there's always an election coming. So they don't want to make themselves like involved in a polarized topic as Cuba. So they don't touch it.
Yep.
So I say, and everybody's asking me, wait, and don't worry, there's gonna be don't worry, everybody's like trying to point attention next there, maybe, but we have been waiting so much.
That's right.
So that was, I was angry and frustrated. But after that, I just talked to the people on the street, talking. I didn't know that Washington D.C. was a black city, so I just turned around to the streets. That was really surprising for me because the Congress is really white.
Yep.
I wasn't expecting that.
If you watch the media, you get the idea that Washington is a white city, and there
Exactly.
may be a sprinkle of black people every now and then, but that's not the case.
That's not the case. Well, now I think that the population's being like small, trying to get small because of gentrification and everything. But anyway, it's a black city, so I think director of photography Jihan take me to talk to the people on the streets, and was magic. I was like, so many people, like, they know about sanctions. They know this. They even say that sanctions is violence. I was like, who is these people? Why are they on TV asking interviews to these people, journalists in the United States? They understand how the policy affects Cubans. They think that there's unfair. They are not with the policy. But when I say, okay, why these opinions are not in Congress? They told me, oh, it's because Washington, D.C. doesn't have any representation in Congress. How is that possible? And I started to dig in that. I realized that there's something wrong with the black cities in this country. If the black people and their opinions have been listening to the high level of policy, how is that possible? So my hope comes from that people, from the people of Washington, D.C. and the streets of Washington, D.C., but also the people having opportunity to have a conversation with in the entire tour. We start touring October 1st. We have been visiting like 11 cities. The United States, we are doing, trying to promote our work up here on the hill and also Hardline on the Hudson. That is our two last documentaries. So people understand it. And people get it. I think that the black people get it the most because sadly they have been experienced U.S. policy on their own.
Internally, exactly. But it's powerful that you can make the connection so that we are able to articulate the sameness in terms of impact and in terms of motivation. And the motivation is certainly supremacist and colonial or imperial. And it is the motivation is arrogant, cultural chauvinism, right? And a sense of privilege that has no basis except for the protection of what was stolen and what is kept from the masses of people. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is news person, journalist Liz Oliva Fernandez. She is a native born and living in Cuba, but on a U.S. tour promoting some film documentary work she's doing. Liz, you're going to be, I think, tonight at University of Minnesota and tomorrow at Parkway Theater at 7 p.m. As a guest of the Minnesota-Cuba Committee. Talk about what you're doing with them and invite people to come out and support and learn about your work.
Well, we are trying to doing a lot of work trying to educate people here because we are trying to change the perspectives, or maybe not change, but bring one new perspective to the Cuba issue and U.S. policy on Cuba, because I'm pretty sure that when you check our work, you realize that that's not the story that have been told me in the entire life living in the U.S. Why? Well, because it's more sad. The history is more sad, and Cuba is not the bad guy. Cuba is not the bad guy. I'm thinking that when I'm trying to explain about how this policy work, is like this is high school. You have a bully that is the United States, and you have the small guy, a smart guy also that is Cuba. Well, we have trying to show two new pieces of documentaries we have been doing during this year. The first one is uphill on the hill that is focusing in Washington, D.C., and also what drives the policy on Cuba and who is behind that policy. We are trying to explain that. We are doing like
Explain that.
interviews.
Stop there and explain that a little bit. Who is behind the policy, and why is
Well,
the policy? How has it been so effective in keeping a lockdown on Cuba, even when there seemed to be movement a little bit with the Obama administration, but that was rolled back quickly. If it was real, now, you can tell me, was it real?
Well, who's behind that? There are four Cuban Americans that are really powerful and they have like a really powerful seats on Congress. One of them is Bob Menendez, Senator Bob Menendez. I'm pretty sure that you have been heard about him because his last corruption scandal and also his impeachment is not the first one, it's the third one, and he has been surviving to all of that during all this year. And also Marco Rubio's is a Republican senator, Maria Elvira Salazar, Mario Diaz-Balart. I'm talking about names that maybe like it's like random on you. I'm talking about also that politicians are Republican, but also Democrats, but they have the same positions about Cuba. And this is something that is important to people to know that there is no difference between Republicans and Democrats. The policy, US policy on Cuba will be the same no matter what, because they have these lobby organizations that put money on both parties. So in order the person who win, they are always going to have the same policy on Cuba. This is the policy they have.
The center of that money is Miami, right?
Yeah.
And it's Miami that feels like it is owed, that its wealth was taken by the revolution, or its opportunity was taken. I think there was an attitude when those who fled Cuba in 1959 that their wealthy futures were interrupted and they have to start over here in Miami. They've amassed wealth and power, and that power guides U.S. policy in Cuba. Maybe it's more than that, but that's at least the center of it.
Maybe, but I think that is too simple because these people that have business in Cuba, they also have business in DR and Honduras, El Salvador. So they are not poor people. The people they have wealth enough, and this is not they are starting over. They already have business in the United States at the moment. That's why they flew to the United States, because they have been spending time here. They have business. They know people. They always say that this is people that are nostalgia for the process before the revolution. I said, this is not so simple because, for example, Marco Rubio, his parents left Cuba before, like after the revolution in the 66, I think, 56. I'm so sorry, 56. So that's crazy. And also, where is the anger is coming from? Because I didn't understand. I don't get it. Where is this angry coming from? Because I know people here that their parents flew their countries, because I always talk about how Cubans flew their country, but the people who come from DR, Haiti, Jamaica, Barbados, Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, they're flying from what? Communism too? Because in this country there are people from around the world, nobody's like questioning that, because most of the time it's because United States, U.S. government has been destabilized their own countries, so they came here trying to pursue the American dream that ends to be the American nightmare. So it's go beyond of that. I really want to get an interview with all of these people because so far I'm still waiting. Even when they say that yes, they're going to give me an interview. And it's crazy because I couldn't get it. I know that there's a lot of power and money behind that, but I really can't understand. Because, for example, when the Obama did what they did about Cuba, these people are still around. So what is the difference with the Biden administration? He's trying to get in Florida. He's getting Florida for real. Democrats are really trying to get a state that he's not he's not Democrat anymore. So what is the real reason? I don't know. If you watch Uphill on the Hill, And you follow Belly of the Beast Cuba on Instagram, on YouTube. Maybe you can have like a piece of things and trying to do this big puzzle that is U.S. policy on Cuba. But at the end, it's just that it's money and power the most of the time.
So I watched this morning Belly of the Beast episode number 5, I think it was, and that was about the July 11th.
Yeah.
July 11th protests in the streets. Talk about that. What did that mean, and what conclusions are you presenting as you describe what happened, why it happened, and what it means for the future of Cuba?
Well, people are tired. People are tired, angry, desperate. They want solutions. They want answer. U.S. government, U.S. policy is too far away from us. The policy is not against. It's not like this is Sanchez are against Liz and her family. This is a whole country. So people are so worried and too busy trying to survive day to day that they can't see the big picture. And the big picture is you are the last piece of the domino effects. So if this government, I'm going to try to explain in a more simple way. Here, people are worried about the shutdown of the government, or at least was worried about that a few weeks ago.
Right.
Shutdown of the government because it's affecting the public sector. Well,
Right.
in Cuba, everything is public sector. So if you're trying to suffocate the government, you're trying to suffocate the public sector. The most of the people in Cuba work for the public sector. The most of them who work for the public sector used to be Black people. So at the end, you're affecting the most Black people.
Okay.
And for example, if you're affecting the government, you're affecting the capacity to we have access to quality healthcare and public education. I'm not talking about you limited us to access to medications, drugs, raw materials, and everything, because everything is public in Cuba. So it's like this government, U.S. government, is trying to shut down our government for 60 years, and people are suffering the consequence. I'm talking about who are going to do the trash collection, everything that in Cuba is public. So it's pretty difficult, and people are trying to get answer from the government. Okay, they say, well, okay, the government, the sanctions have been in place for 60 years, so Cuban government needs a plan B. Okay, but the sanctions is not being the same during the same amount of time. It's been changing and be targeting. Like if you realize that, okay, now Cuba is getting money from tourism, well, we are attacking tourism to come to Cuba. Now it's illegal for European citizens come to the United States. It's in a period of 10 years they went to Cuba. Now they need to apply for a visa for coming here, and it's possible they say no. Someone who needs to apply for a visa knows how long it takes apply for a U.S. visa. Like take years to get just a date for you got it. So it's crazy, and people are tired, and people don't want to think about, and we don't have any agency in the U.S. government or in U.S. policy. We can't change. We can't vote in Florida. That's crazy. So they just want answers and solutions. And this is not something that the Cuban government could do in a small period of time. Certainly.
One of your videos also talked about the continuing and almost explosive growth of private enterprise, of entrepreneurship that's privately owned in Cuba. How do you see that as one of the steps for reimagining Cuba? How do you see it?
Well, this is something that I'm really glad, but I'm also anxious about, because I'm really happy that people have opportunities to do an entrepreneur and do business and get the things running, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. I'm talking about Black people. I'm talking about women. Because, for example, you can see in the advertising now that some of the entrepreneurs are looking for a young woman, white young woman, and you barely can see Black people working in the private sector, like in a well position. I'm talking about workers' rights. We really have workers' rights in Cuba. Sometimes in the private sector, these rights are kind of nebulosa, like they're not clear. and they work more than 8 hours, and they have made more pay than people who work for the states, but this pay is not enough for the amount of hours and effort that they put in their
Right.
work. So yeah, I'm happy for that, but at the same time, I'm kind of anxious about that because it's also coming with a lot of challenges that we need to be alert,
Mhm.
because we have a lot of rights and a lot of privilege that at least I'm not will to lost.
So let me ask you, what role do you think Black Americans can play in supporting the rights for Black people and all people in Cuba, and the rights for women in Cuba, for the recognition and opportunity for uh, uh, gay people in Cuba? Uh, what can Black Americans, how can Black Americans be both aware and supportive? I'm hearing and seeing in you a campaign to educate and to connect. And,
Hire me.
I see a campaign to connect. How do we facilitate and support that in a way
Well,
that brings support to, the ideas and your expectations for a um, uh, a continually improving and fair Cuba?
yeah, well, for me, I think that I just want to do like more aware about this, but we have the same background, we have the same past,
Mhm.
we came from the same place.
That's right.
Maybe we are like cousins and we
More than likely, yeah.
yeah, and we don't know about that because slavery bring us together, and that's the past that united us as a community, and so with the Black people around the world. But I think that gives us an example of how it's possible a social revolution in a multiracial country as Cuba it is. But also, I would like to say that you can learn a lot. You can learn about our mistake. You can make, you can do it better in order to have access to all of this. And also, I think that Cuba is a country and also is a society that is worthy to fight for, because that makes that it's possible. Get it?
Mhm.
And this is not something about working too hard, like if 24/7. This is something that social justice brings to us. In order to support that, I really highly recommend it to people to travel to Cuba, to try to connect with the people that look like us, to try to connect also with the history that we have in common. I think that if you have if you vote here and you have representative here, you can talk to them and try to put on the table Cuba as an issue, because we vote for people that, oh, I don't know what is your policy about Cuba. We are not voting because this is country have so many problems that I'm too worry about housing, healthcare, secure, insurance, everybody. So this is another topic that I'm bringing to the table for
Mhm.
U.S. citizens, but I think it's important because that means that people are suffering in general. And in Cuba, we have this sense of community that is really is really necessary in my life nowadays. But I was growing up in that way. That means if the other person is not okay, you are not okay.
Mhm.
Because if the other person have a lot of challenge, that means that you have a lot of challenge too, in order to get the persons overcome that challenge. And that's the whole thing. If the Black people around the world are not okay, the people in the United States can be okay,
Mhm.
because that means that the policies that come from this country are harm Black people around the world,
That's right.
not just in Cuba.
Listen, so great to talk to you. I want to share with you that my newspaper, my weekly newspaper, Inside News, has a section called Afrodescendientes. And presently, we feature writing by a Venezuelan activist, Jesus Chucho Garcia, who writes about the Cimarrones and Afro-Latino communities in Venezuela, in Peru, in Uruguay, in Colombia, and
Yeah.
in Mexico, and Cuba. And the idea is to help us become familiar with ourselves wherever we are. So we print the article in Spanish, in English, in Portuguese. I have an editor who's in Bahia who translates them. We decided to also print the articles in Swahili, and we print them in Somali because Minnesota, you will see, has a huge Somali population.
Yeah, I saw it this morning in a high school.
Okay, so we print this in French, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Somali, and Swahili. The idea, again, is to help us elevate our thinking and our connectedness to each other through language. So maybe we'll be able to invite you to contribute there as well. We're out of time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.